Well, good morning. Well, we are kicking off Seasons of Parenting, and so I thought I'd start out by sharing with you guys that the very first time that I ever thought about being a parent, that the very first time that this thing even goes through my mind, I was playing defense, and the offense was pretty strong, and I was outsized, I was outmatched. And there I was about 12 years old, and I had this conversation with my mom, a conversation that I had initiated. And I don't remember exactly the quote of what I said, but I remember just thinking through that day. I'm pretty sure this happened on a Saturday. But there I was having to do these chores around the house that I was sick and tired of doing. And so I ended up saying something like this: when I become a parent, I'm not going to make my kids do any chores. You know, it's the very first thought. I never even thought about parenting at all until in that moment right there. And that certainly was very well intentioned. But when you fast forward 15 years later, I was a newlywed, and there I was in my own place now, doing some chores, and I remember thinking, I can't wait till we have a kid. Because here I am now, an adult, doing the chores too. And I don't want to do it as an adult if I had to do it as a kid. And so, yes, I was well-intentioned in my thoughts of going, yeah, my kids will never do chores, but believe me, our kids have done chores. Because it all changes. The perspective all changes. We're talking about seasons of parenting, and today we're going to be focused on this pre-season parenting. And so what is pre-season parenting? Pre-season parenting is for before you ever become a parent. And so I know that there's a lot of us in here that we're going, hey, well, you know what, I'm already a parent. You know, some of you guys are like tempted to, like, well, maybe I should just get up and go hang out in the coffee shop, and, you know, I can did the music, and that's good enough. And so, but I think there's going to be some things that are going to be worth hearing every week, no matter what stage you're in. But we're going to be looking at all of the various stages. When I think about the best impact that I had on my life during my preseason stage of parenting, I had a 6-year period that I think did a really good job of shaping in me who I was going to be as a parent before I ever became a parent. And it's because I was a youth pastor. It's because I had worked with teenagers. I worked with them before I was even dating Cheryl. I worked with them through that dating. I got married. And just watching and observing during these teenage years, seeing how kids were turning out and what they were like, and seeing some kids that just seemed to just have it all together, seeing some kids that just seemed to be really struggling, seeing some kids that just seemed to be lost and floundering, and watching and observing what role their parents were playing in their lives. And it wasn't that the kids that had it all together were necessarily kids that their parents had it all together and were doing a great job. It was just watching the mix and watching the dynamic. Some kids are easier to parent than other kids. That's just a harsh reality that a lot of us don't even realize that until we become a parent. And then we go, whoa, because this one was easy and this one was tough, but yet I was doing the same stuff. Why did this turn out this way? But I remember just watching and observing and just taking note. And so if you're somebody that you're not a parent yet, And do you think that there's a likelihood that you will be a parent one day? I think one of the best things that you could do to help you in parenting would be to volunteer in youth ministry. I just do. I just genuinely believe that by you taking and serving in this area and watching these kids, it'd be great. I'm not dogging children's ministry. It's a great place to serve, great place to volunteer. But when you're volunteering in children's ministry, for the most part, a lot of these kids are still fairly compliant. For the most part, a lot of these kids, they still feel like, you know what, Dad's still bigger and stronger than me, so I better keep my act together. It's when they get to their teenage years that they start taking on the life that they want to take on. And you begin to see and you begin to understand what kind of role does a parent play in shaping and correcting and developing their kids. And it's a great place for you to be if you want to focus on this preseason parenting. See, parenting, it crosses everybody's mind. That everybody ends up thinking about this at some point. Whether your thought is, I'll never be a parent, that's you thinking about parenting. Whether that thought is a thought that says, you know, I'd just be happier if I could be a parent one day. Whether that thought is a questioning thought of, you finally have them and you're like going, why did I ever want to be a parent? Maybe it's that idea of you're kind of looking at the checkbook balance and the credit card bill and you're like going, will I ever recover from the expense of being a parent? Do we all have these parenting thoughts? We all think about parenting. And so what are we going to do with our thoughts and how do we make the most of them? See, we have parents that are the natural parents that they just had kids and they had it the natural way. There's adoptive parents. There is foster parents. When we look at parenting, there's all kinds of parents. There's grandparents. There's all different kinds of parents. And so let's take some time to look at this whole idea of parenting and what we can do to make the most of it. Because, see, we have parents that are actively parenting. We have inactive parents. We even have some absent parents. But let's look at what kind of parent that we could be, and if you're already in it, what kind of parent you should be. So it all started when we look in Genesis chapter 4. It all started just looking right here and seeing this whole parenting come to life. Genesis chapter 4, verses 1 and 2. It says, now Adam had sexual relations with his wife, Eve, and she became pregnant. And when she gave birth to Cain, she said, with the Lord's help, I have produced a man. Later she gave birth to his brother and named him Abel. When I look at my own life and my own parenting, that I've been a parent for just over 17 years. And so for us, we are now in this home stretch of the regular season of parenting. This time, this season when you're developing and raising your kids. And this is coming near the end for us, and it's coming quickly for our son, Noah, who's a senior this year. And when you ask me, how are you with that? I'm not going, oh, it's awesome, it's great. I mean, this is what it's been all about. It's about growing them to this stage and then releasing them and setting them free. But if you ask Cheryl, she's more like, I'm not ready. No, I'm not ready for that. And I think that's probably very stereotypical between the difference between a father and a mother. That a father's like, okay, we did our job, let him go. And mom's like, you know, I've enjoyed that job. I'm not sure I'm ready to give that job up yet. I still like them being around. And it's a difference between who we are. That we have all of these seasons of parenting, this preseason, the regular season, this postseason that next year I'm going to be in when Noah's out and begins to be on his own and he's going to school, going to college. And then there's going to be that off season. And that off season is when you're completely done with being responsible for them. It's not that you're done relationally with them, but it's when you're done being responsible for them. And so we're going to be looking at all of these during these next 4 weeks. You know, if you were to sum up the role of parenting into one sentence, I wonder what your sentence would be. That if you could just take in one single sentence, what would you do? What would you say that the role of parenting would be? I think that when it comes to this role of parenting, the role of parenting is this role that says, I want to parent, I want to be able to take kids and raise them so that they can be successful in life. And as I raise them, that they would no longer be dependent on me, but they would be forever dependent on God. That we would raise them up, that they would be successful, that they would no longer depend on us as their parents, but yet they would forever depend on God as their Heavenly Father. That we would raise our kids this way. That successful parenting, it produces honor students. Now, I'm not talking about the little bumper sticker you put on the back of your car and say, my kid's an honor student at. I'm talking about honor in the way that their behavior and their actions are. The successful parenting, it produces honor students. It produces honor children. Children that are honoring their father and their mother. When we look at this idea of honoring, this is actually something that God gave as an instruction that we actually call a command. That He gave us 10 commandments. And the very first 4 commandments that God gives us, it all has to do with our relationship with Him. And then the last 6 have to do with our relationship with each other. And the very first commandment that God gives us in relationship to each other has to do with the relationship between a parent and a child. It's the first one He gives. We find this in Exodus chapter 20, verse 12. Honor your father and mother. Then you will live a long, full life in the land the Lord your God is giving you. That what God was even saying to the people directly as they were able to see this and hear this in the moment was, here you are, you're just kind of wandering in the wilderness, because this is what God's people were doing then. He said, I've got a land I want to give you, and I'm going to lead you to it. And it's going to be this promised land. It's the best land. But honor your father and your mother. And when you do this, then you're going to live a long and prosperous life. That there's something related to the way that we can live out our life and enjoy it with the way that we honor our father and our mother. When we look at this word honor here, it's often read with this understanding that the responsibility lies with the children. Hey, children, honor your father and your mother. And yet I look at that and I go, that's true, but there's also something else here. And what else is here is that we as parents, that we should be parenting in such a way that we don't make it difficult for our kids to honor us. That we parent in such a way that we set them up to succeed to where they even desire, they want to honor us. That we focus on that relationship. And that it gets to happen. When I think about parenthood changes the relationship between mom and dad. It does. It changes the relationship. You think about a relationship that you had with this person that has been the other person that's involved in having a kid with you. And it changes this relationship. Parenthood, it forever changes this relationship. It doesn't have to ruin the relationship. That's not what I'm saying. It does forever change it, though. It changes the dynamic of that relationship. That relationship, it ends up experiencing some kinds of hardships that it never would experience if you didn't have kids. That's just a harsh fact of parenting. And it changes the dynamic. It's not an instant change. It doesn't just change literally overnight. It's an overnight activity that often changes that brings this to be. But the change isn't overnight. It's something that ends up happening over time. And the less grounded you are in your relationship with each other, the easier it is to let adding children introduce greater hardships. When Cheryl and I were getting serious about, hey, is this relationship going to be something that's going to lead to marriage? One of the things that we talked through was we wanted to be on the 5-year wait plan. That was our plan, not necessarily God's, but as we were just talking through, it was like, we want to be on this 5-year wait plan. We want to make sure that we get grounded in our relationship with each other, that we would have that. Because Cheryl and I, we got married 15 months after we met. So we just felt like, let's make sure that we are protecting our relationship and getting really grounded and rooted in it before we add the difficulty that's going to come with children. Parenting, this is a shocker, parenting adds stress to your life. Yeah, when we look at this whole preseason parenting, you need to understand that parenting is something that will add stress to your life. Now, the stress is going to be worth it, but it definitely adds stress to your life. So, I want to give you a caveat as we just talk through this series. And that is, even especially today, we're going to be talking about marriage some. And I'm going to refer to that kind of relationship that leads to parenting as a marriage relationship. And I know that some in here are going to be people that you're going to end up being a parent without ever having been married. You're going to end up being a parent. There's going to be some that are parents that you started out married and you're not married anymore. There's going to be some that you've just adopted and brought kids into the relationship that way, or you're fostering. There's all different ways for us to be able to get there. But what I believe that God's best plan for raising kids is to raise them with their father and their mother who love each other genuinely, who love God genuinely, and are going to work together to produce kids that are going to be successful as they grow up, and they're going to be less dependent on the parents, and they're going to be fully dependent on God. But if that's not you, and that doesn't describe the situation that you are currently in, we've got a God who is full of grace, a God who is full of love, a God who doesn't hold against us whenever we don't do his best plan. And then he still comes along beside us and says, hey, here's where to go from here. And so I just want to share that with you as we move forward. See, we have something here at Crosspoint that we've held on to for years, and that is that there's no perfect people allowed. And so even those of us who are married, even those of us who are married and our kids are the kids that are a result of our marriage to each other, we're not perfect either. None of us are. But we have a perfect Heavenly Father who desires us to know him and to be able to have relationships with each other that is going to be genuine and authentic, and it's going to lead to understanding greater relationship with God. So this morning, I want to share with you, as we think about this whole idea of preseason parenting, I want to share with you the top 10 parenting myths. That there's some myths out there, and some of these you might hear and go, I never believed that. And some of them you might hear and go, that's not a myth, that's true. But I want to share with you 10. And so whether you're in the thick of it, whether you're on the opposite side, you've finished your role of parenting, whether you're on this preseason, these are the myths that I want to share with you for us to have on our minds. So, number 10, good parenting comes naturally. Good parenting comes naturally. I'm not going to unpack any of these right now because we're going to come back and do that. Number 9, your children deserve the best. Number 8, moms are essential, dads are optional. Number 7, children can help hold a marriage together. Number 6, quality time is better than quantity time. Number 5, all parental mistakes will ruin your children forever. Number 4, parents shouldn't fight in front of the kids. Number 3, you should treat all your kids the same. Number 2, I should be my child's friend. Number 1, good parents put their kids first. So these are the top 10 parenting myths. So let's just unpack them. Number 10, good parenting comes naturally. I will tell you that parenting comes naturally. As far as there is just a natural result of something, and all of a sudden, presto, there's kids. It's all natural. The parenting does come naturally. It really does. But good parenting, it requires intentionality. That we will never be a good parent just by winging it. We have to be very intentional about what we're thinking about. We have to be disciplined in our own thoughts and our own actions and our own behaviors. We have to be thinking down the road and into the future and what it is that we're aiming for and striving for. We've got to have a game plan that we put together. See, every parent, with the exception of our Heavenly Father, has screwed up. We have. We've all ended up messing up. In fact, I heard before I ever had kids, I heard that every parent should have 2 funds for their kids. They should have the college fund, and they should have the therapy fund. And the reason that they need therapy is because we get it wrong. Because of the things that we end up doing that causes difficulty and hardship for them. Let's look at number 9, the myth. Your children deserve the best. I wish that I could quantify how many parents are in debt because they're trying to buy their kids things that they cannot afford. That they look at their kids and they go, you know what, I didn't have all the things that I wanted when I was growing up, and so I want my kids to have. I remember getting Noah for his 2nd birthday a Power Wheels. Because, see, I still remember to this day, I never had a Power Wheel. I've got issues. Because my mom and dad didn't love me enough to get me a Power Wheel. And so Noah, when he wasn't even capable of even turning the steering wheel, got a brand new Power Wheel. And it was me just going, hey, I want him to have the best. But I quickly realized, you know what, if I'm going to be a great parent, it's not about what I buy for my kids. It's about what I do for my kids and what I do with my kids. That's what's going to matter. That we've got to make sure that what we do when it comes to the best is we give the best of ourselves to our kids instead of just trying to purchase the best for them. Number 8, moms are essential, but dads are optional. Do you realize that the traditional family is quickly changing? That it is quickly shifting what a family is. It is a whole lot more complicated than what it ever was of understanding what is a family. It's more complex than it's ever been. When we actually look at kids, that when we look at this recent data shows that 41% of children being born are being born outside of a marriage. 41%. That is a major shift. When we just look and try to see, well, where have we been and where are we headed? When we look from a 1960 census, that what we see is that 9% of kids were in a single-parent home in 1960. When we moved to 1980, we're at 19% that are in a single-parent home. But when we look at 2013, and that's the most recent data I could find, when we look at 2013, we have 34% that are in a single-parent home. That things are changing. It's changing for who we are and what our kids are and what they're like. That moms and dads, they both serve essential roles in raising our kids. That there's a huge benefit to being able to raise kids with both a mom and a dad that both get to come in and they're going, hey, we're in this together. Not just a tag team, hey, you take them, I'm exhausted. Okay. It's not just a tag team, it's a, hey, let's do this together. So let's decide together what we're aiming for and what we're trying to do. What have we defined as what the success is that we're aiming for and how we want to raise our kids and set them up to succeed? And that we would work together for this. When we look at parenting, we need to look and see how can we achieve the best results for our kids. And I believe that God's best plan is that we would do this with a mom and a dad. And if there's no longer a mom and dad that are now living together, that are no longer married together or never were, what could we do to try to help make sure that we're working together? You know, when I talk to parents, that they're no longer with the one that was the other one that was responsible for bringing this life into existence, they're not excited that the other one's not involved when the other one's not involved. They're frustrated. They're frustrated when they can't be on the same page and they can't be working toward the same things. We can even find that frustration inside of a marriage where we're not working together. And it's easy to begin to think, well, you know what? I'm just going to take them and they're going to be better off with just me. And there might be some rare circumstances where that could be true, when there could be some abuse involved. But for the most part, that wouldn't be true. Number 7, children can help hold a marriage together. You know, if you aren't on the same page before you have kids, you're going to be so far off once you finally have kids. But yet there's so many that'll end up going, you know, if we just have another kid, maybe that'll be what's going to take. Or let's just have a kid and that'll hold us together. And yet it won't, because it introduces so much more stress. Choosing to have a baby should be a very prayerful decision. That you'd be praying through this and going, okay, this is God's timing. Because having a baby will only add stress to an already troubled marriage. It will not help hold it together. Number 6, quality time is better than quantity time. See, I heard something years ago that really shaped something in me. And this was what was said. The quality is the quantity. The quality is the quantity. That especially when our kids are younger, they can't determine what's quality and what not. They just know, are you there or are you not? Are you doing something with me? Are you involved in my life? Are you supporting me? Are you there? And the quality is the quantity. That we would give our kids significant time. That we wouldn't give them time at the risk of our marriage, but that we would give them time that they need and they deserve, and that should actually enhance our marriage. Number 5, your parental mistakes will ruin your children forever. You know, there are some people that just get so down and hard on themselves because of the mistakes that they've made as a parent. That might even be you today. You might even be carrying this pressure of going, my kids are forever ruined because of me. And while I do think that we have a significant role in helping to shape and guide our kids, it's again going to be very rare that our kids are ruined because of us. Could be some exceptions. But for the most part, we just need to understand we're all going to mess up. They need to hear from us, we're sorry. I blew it. It needs to be genuine, not in a heated moment. That they need to know that we love and that we care. And how we handle our imperfections how it is that we handle ourselves and admit that we aren't perfect will determine whether or not they give us permission to be imperfect. That the more you strive to be able to show, well, I'm perfect, I'm great, the harder it's going to be for them to give you permission to be an imperfect parent. So let's parent in a way that they feel like it's easy for them to give us permission to be imperfect. Number 4, parents shouldn't fight in front of the kids. Cheryl and I were newlyweds, and we'd been married about a month, and we had our first fight. And it just broke Cheryl. And it broke Cheryl because she thought it was going to be our last fight. As in, we're doomed. It's over, it's done. And what I discovered was she never saw her parents fight. That they never fought in front of her. She didn't know that you could be married and have a fight. And so after she was all black and blue, no, just kidding. But she was distraught over that, thinking that this isn't going to work. We're not going to make it because she never saw it. You know, our kids, they need to be able to see us fight. And you know what they need to see? They need to see that we as parents can fight fair. That's what they need to be able to see. They need to be able to see that we can disagree and we can even be at odds, but we never lose respect for each other. They need to see this. It needs to be modeled to them so that they can go, you know what? I see that you disagree, but yet I see that you still love each other, and I see that you recover, and I see that you're stronger because of it. That we should be showing this and modeling this to our kids. That how you fight, now that's a whole nother subject, right? That talking through all of that. But when you fight fair, when you fight with honesty and respect and integrity, this is something that actually helps our kids. Number 3, you should treat all your kids the same. You know, here's what we probably want. What we probably want are the same results for our kids. But if we treat them all the same, we're not going to get the same results. Because they're different. They're not going to respond the same way. They're not going to be motivated by the same things. You know, when our kids were much younger, and for us to send Noah to his room, it crushed them. But when we send Miri to her room when she was really young, okay. It's like, okay, scratch that as a consequence, because it doesn't work for her. And we have to figure out what works, what doesn't. And you can't treat them the same. But what you should be doing is understanding that you're after the same goal. And so you got to look and see how they are different from each other and then parent differently for that. Number 2, I should be my child's friend. Parenting is more demanding and more complicated than you being your kid's friend. That when you take this approach of trying to be their friend, of aiming for this, you will lose your authority in the relationship. You'll also end up having respect that's lost towards you. That when we're raising our kids, our goal should not be that our kids are going to be our friends and that we're going to have fun with them as friends while we're raising them. That we can have fun with them, but it just doesn't have to be as a friendship. That raising our kids, the goal shouldn't be that we're going to have a new BFF in life for the next 18 years. That shouldn't be the goal. When we look at parenting, parenting's about development. It's about developing our kids, and developing our kids, it requires boundaries. It requires structure. Boundaries and structure that we give, it requires consequences and rewards. These are the things that we must give our kids. And number 1, good parents put their kids first. this is so difficult for so many parents. And that if you're in this preseason stage, this is really good for you to hear and to know and to try to understand and process. That your kids, when you put them first, you are going to jeopardize much. That really what should come first is God. That God should be first. It should be the most important relationship in your life. What should come second would be your marriage. And that would be the second strongest relationship that you would have. And that would be what comes second in your priorities of life. And then our kids come in third. You know, there's a way that I want to try to illustrate this to you, and I think about being on an airplane. And I think about just while you're on the airplane and before you even take off, the stewardess or flight attendants, they come out and they kind of give you this demonstration and they walk you through several things. And one of the things they tell us is hey, in the event of the airplane losing cabin pressure, that if that were to ever take place, this losing of the cabin pressure, that there's going to be an oxygen mask that's going to drop. And what you need to do is you need to put that on yourself first and then assist your child. And we can hear that and we can go, I'm not doing that. My kid's more important than my life, and it's my responsibility to lay it down for them. And so I've got to give it to them. But the problem is our kids are going to be more panicked than we are. I don't know what to do. And you're going to be trying to put that mask on them, and it's going to keep getting knocked off of them. And you've only got, when we read, it actually tells us that we've got only about 15 seconds to respond and to get this thing on before we start sucking air that we can't breathe. And we are going to jeopardize our own lives. And so why not take 3 seconds and get yourself taken care of so that you can then start taking care of your kids. You see, this whole idea is an idea that says what we have to do in our life is we have to put our relationship with our Heavenly Father first. It's the most important relationship we would have. Maybe you haven't even begun that relationship. Maybe you're here today and you're just like going, I don't even know what that looks like and what that is and what that means. Well, I think you're in a great place. And I think you're in a place you're going to be able to hear more about this and discover more about that. But that comes first, and that relationship provides the oxygen for us in troubled times. When we lose pressure in our marriage, when we lose pressure with our kids, that must come first. Of putting that relationship and centering our lives around that. And when we do, it's going to equip us to be able to be the spouse that we need to be. It's going to equip us to be able to be the parent that we need to be. It's going to strengthen us so that we're going to be able to provide the strength that they're going to need as we raise them. That one thing that I decided during the preseason years of parenting was this one simple thing. Something that I decided I wanted to live by. This was a preseason parenting thought for me that has rung true for 17 years so far. And I decided years ago that I wanted to be the parent who would never say to my kids, because I said so. It's not because I don't believe in that authority. I absolutely do. And parents, if you do that, you've got the authority to do that. And you want them to do something because I said so, you certainly can. But for me, I didn't want this to be part of my parenting. I wanted my kids to understand this. When I say something and they say why, that I would not respond with because I said so, that I would respond this way. After you do it, you can ask me why, and I'll be glad to tell you. You know what I discovered? Why is just a stall tactic. Our kids really don't want to know why. They just don't want to do it. I can count on one hand the number of times my kids have come back after they've done it and said, okay, Dad, why'd you have me do that? That there were times I had to remind them. They would say, why? And I'd look at them and say, you can't ask me that yet. They'd walk off and go do. Because you can't ask me why until after the fact. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to get my kids to understand that I'm the parent and I have that authority. And you need to honor your father and your mother. And this was just one of those ways for me that I decided years ago that was going to be the way that I was going to try to implement this honor system within this family dynamic. It's worked well. It's worked well because I have kids that are now 15 and 17. They don't even ask me why anymore. They stopped asking me why years ago because they understood that's what Dad just said. That's what needs to happen, and that they would go do it. You see, when we have kids that are real little, and they're in the kitchen and they're just wandering around and they see a little stool or they grab a little pan and they flip it upside down and they step up on it and there's the stove right there that Mama's been warming up the top for it for cooking, and they go to start playing drums on that. When you see that begin to take place, what do you do as a parent? Stop! Don't! Why? And then they're going to burn. And they're going to cause damage to themselves. But when you begin to parent in such a way that you understand, hey, you're the authoritarian and you've got to get your kids to understand this. And you say stop and they, oh, okay. What? Okay, well, why? Well, come down and I'll tell you now that you've stopped. And then we can help them. There's going to be much more severe things that our kids might end up trying to do. And we've got to parent in such a way that they understand the relationship is an honoring relationship and that we're here to help lead them and guide them to be successful. We're going to do this for 3 more weeks. In fact, next week we've got a guest speaker coming in, Dr. Walker Moore, that's going to come in and share with us about this regular season of life. And then he's going to be with us next Sunday afternoon as well from 4 to 6 doing a parenting conference with us. And I can't encourage you enough to sign up for that, to come and hear that. If you're in the thick of parenting or that you're that person going, hey, I think I'm going to be a parent one day, this is going to be paramount for you. If you're somebody that you're going, hey, I'd like to try to influence my adult children and the way that they're parenting, then this could be for you as well. If you're somebody that you're going, hey, you know, I'm kind of beyond this whole stage and I don't really need that, well, here's something we could even use from you. That we want to provide child care. And it's very difficult to provide child care for all the people that are going to want to do this, that are going, hey, but I'm not available because I want to be hearing this. And if you're beyond that season, we would love to hear from you. And you can just use a connection card, stop by the Welcome Center and say, hey, I'm willing to be one of those people to help with child care next week from that 4 to 6 parenting conference because it's not going to affect me. We would love to have you be involved in some way, shape, or form at the way that we look at try to invest in our parents so that we can invest in our kids. Pray with me. Heavenly Father, God, you are certainly a God that has given us understanding about the fact that we are created to be in relationship with people. We're created to be in relationship with you. God, thank you for simple instructions, even an instruction, a command that's as simple as honor your father and your mother. That there's so much in those so few words for us to be able to look at and see and go, what role do I have in that? And God, that we would see whether we're the kids or whether we're the parents, that we would see that we have a role in that honor and that we would do all that we could do to develop that. God, I pray that you would help those of us that are in this pre-season of parenting and help them. Help them begin to make decisions now that'll shape the way that they parent. Jesus, it's in your name we pray. Amen.